A high school girl dreams of becoming a singer. She records a video of herself singing and uploads it to a singing competition. To her surprise, a famous singer notices her and listens to her video. Overjoyed, she thinks she's about to break into the music industry and become the next big star. But her journey is filled with obstacles. Her name is Elena, a girl who loves to sing. Today, she's rushing around school, desperately trying to borrow a phone from her classmates. She's about to connect to a radio show where she gets the chance to sing with her idol, a music industry legend. Unfortunately, just as the show is about to start, her phone dies. To get back on the call, Elena needs to swap out her phone's battery. The only person in class with the same type of phone is a boy named Kehoe. She asks to borrow his battery, but he demands payment first. Frustrated, she collapses to the floor, complaining about her bad luck. Seeing her so upset, Kehoe finally gives in and hands over his battery. Just in time, the radio show calls. Elena finally gets to hear her idol's voice. Overcome with emotion, she starts crying and gushing over her. Annoyed by all the fangirling, Kehoe suddenly snatches his phone back and pulls out the battery, making Elena furious. Elena had planned to sing live with her idol over the phone. She was sure her voice would impress her and launch her career as the next big star. But Kehoe ruined her chance. Still, Elena refuses to give up. The same music company her idol is signed with is holding auditions. She's determined to enter, but there's one problem. She needs a music video, and she doesn't have a camera. The only person in class who does is a quiet guy. Desperate, Elena offers to pay Kehoe to film her video. He agrees, but he doesn't realize how serious she is about this until he hears her sing. Her voice is incredible, strong, clear, angelic. Even Kehoe is amazed. They film the video, and Kehoe stays up all night editing it. The next day, he's ready to show it to her, but things take a turn for the worse. Elena doesn't show up to school. Worried, he goes to her house and finds her and her dad surrounded by police. It turns out her father isn't a good man. He's been mistreating her, and she finally had enough. She called the police. But her dad is making excuses, lying to everyone. To make things worse, one of the cops on the scene is Kehoe's father. Kehoe knows all too well what it's like to have an abusive father. He spent years trying to escape that life. But now, his father is treating Elena the same way he once treated him. He dismisses her pain, calling it 8th grade syndrome, just like he did with Kehoe. He wants her to hug her dad and act like everything is fine. Trapped, Elena has no choice but to hold onto her dress and apologize to her father, even though she doesn't mean it. That night, Kehoe visits Elena, bringing the finished video on a USB drive. She thanks him but doesn't take it. On TV, her idol is performing, and she's incredible. Out of nowhere, Elena tells Kehoe that her idol is from the same small island she wants to leave. She dreams of getting out, just like her idol, and making it big. Kehoe never forgets those words. Later, he secretly uploads her video to the audition website and leaves his phone number. A few days later, someone from the music company calls. Elena's idol is one of the judges, and out of all the entries, she picks Elena's video. But when Kehoe hands Elena the phone, she shocks him. She says she's not interested in singing anymore. Kehoe is confused. He knows how much Elena wanted to go to Seoul, meet her idol, and perform on stage. But Elena insists she doesn't want to be obsessed with that dream anymore. She says she needs to grow up and stay with her father. Later, their teacher asks Elena to collect the volunteer sign-up forms from the class. She stands in front of her classmates, asking them to turn in their forms, but no one listens. They just goof around. Suddenly, Elena yells and starts crying. Her classmates are stunned. They don't understand why she's so upset. They quickly hand in their forms and apologize, but they don't see it as a big deal. But Kehoe does. He understands her pain. Elena wants to sing in front of her idol. She wants to be famous so that no one can ever hurt her again. Seeing her break down, Kehoe feels her pain so deeply that he can't help but shed a tear too. After school, Kehoe hands Elena a hand-drawn map. It leads to his house. He looks at her seriously and says, "This isn't just some fantasy. I know what's really going on, and if you stay here, it's going to destroy you." Kehoe tells Elena that if her dad ever mistreats her again, she should come to him. He promises that if she does, they'll run away together to Seoul, where he'll help her chase her dreams. That night, Elena's dad is drinking again and calls her over to talk. She feels a deep sense of fear and, without hesitation, follows the map to Kiho's house. When she arrives, Kiho is already prepared for their escape. He hands her a raincoat, helps her put on her shoes, and leads her to the docks. He's already contacted the music company, letting them know that Elena will be at their meeting. The plan is to meet at an old train station in Seoul. They sit by the docks until nearly dawn, waiting for the ferry. Kiho shares his food with Elena, reassuring her, if you really want something, it'll happen, even in ways you never expected. When they finally board the ferry, Elena promises him, I'll make it. I'll become a singer and take care of you. But just as they're talking about the future, Kiho spots Elena's dad's car speeding toward the docks. He realizes he might not be able to go with her. He turns to Elena and says, when you get to Seoul, become a singer like your idol. Forget about everyone on this island, even me. It's the only way he won't find you. Kiho gets off the ferry and does everything he can to stop Elena's dad from boarding. Meanwhile, inside the cabin, Elena opens the backpack Kiho gave her. Along with some snacks and money, she finds a notebook. It's filled with his plans for their journey to Seoul. Tears stream down her face as she finally understands. Kiho helped her because they're both powerless. They both need saving. But fate can be cruel. While Elena is crying, her dad catches up to her. She panics and runs, but she's surrounded by the ocean. There's nowhere left to go. Desperate, she makes a split-second decision. She jumps into the sea. Elena never makes it to the meeting. The music company representatives are furious. When Kiho wakes up in the hospital, his classmates tell him what happened. Elena jumped into the ocean to escape her father. The Coast Guard is searching for her, but thick fog is making it nearly impossible. Staring out at the endless sea, Kiho is filled with frustration. In a moment of rage, he smashes the fish tank in front of Elena's house, setting all the fish free. I wish Elena could be free, just like them, he whispers. But against all odds, Elena doesn't drown. The tide carries her to a deserted island. On her first day there, she scrawls an SOS message in the sand and heads into the jungle to find food. Luckily, the island provides plenty, and she learns how to survive. Back in Seoul, Kiho never gives up hope. He waits for her at the old train station, certain she'll show up someday. But the days turn into weeks, the weeks into months. 15 years pass. Kiho never sees Elena again. Meanwhile, Elena has adapted to life on the island. She's built her own little world, collecting rainwater with upside-down umbrellas and arranging stones to spell out SOS. She dives into the ocean for food, surviving on what the sea provides. Over the years, she's grown from a lost high school girl into a strong, beautiful woman. Then one day, something unexpected happens. A drone appears in the sky. Elena has never seen anything like it before. The drone belongs to two brothers, Smith and Tom. They run a small barbershop in a little town, constantly bickering because they're total opposites. Tom, the younger brother, volunteers for a cleanup trip on a deserted island. Smith, not wanting to be left out, tags along. As Tom works, Smith lounges on the beach, playing with his drone, insisting it's a modern way to find trash. But when the drone flies over Elena's island, she sees it and, curious, picks it up. Smith is furious when he spots her and rushes over, yelling, "Hey, don't touch my drone." But the moment he gets a good look at her, his eyes widen in shock. It's been years since he's seen another person outside of his small town. Elena, overwhelmed, tugs at Smith's face, making sure he's real. And when she realizes he is, she screams with joy. After 15 long years, she's finally going home. The brothers take Elena on their boat, leaving the island behind. Back in the real world, Elena is fascinated and curious about everything. Kimbap is the most popular food, and in her opinion, the best thing she's ever tasted. Everyone has a cell phone, a smartphone, as she calls it. The world has changed so much, and it's overwhelming. Smith buys Elena a new pair of shoes and helps her adjust to walking in them. As she looks at her old, worn-out sneakers, tears well up in her eyes. She remembers the shoes Kiho gave her when he told her to run away with him. Smith, a reporter for an entertainment company, quickly realizes that Elena's story is breaking news. He starts filming and taking pictures to get an exclusive interview. Although Elena is now 31, after spending so many years on a deserted island, she still has the innocence and mindset of a 16-year-old. To learn more about Elena's past, Smith decides to take her back to the island. On the way, Elena suddenly shouts for him to stop. She rushes toward a billboard by the roadside. It's a poster featuring her idol, promoting an upcoming village anniversary celebration. her idol is one of the special guests. Seeing this, Smith thinks he's figured out Elena's story. He assumes she was a crazed fan who ran away from home to meet her idol, got lost, and ended up stranded on an island. When they arrive, Elena visits her old home, but 15 years have passed, and an islander has turned it into a small store. When Elena introduces herself, the shop owner assumes she's there to reclaim her house and immediately kicks her out. Smith, using his knowledge of the law, helps her argue back, leaving the owner speechless. Elena explains that she's not there for the house, she just wants to ask about Kehoe. Hearing his name, the shop owner gets furious. He tells her that after she disappeared, Kehoe lost his mind. He skipped school every day to stare at the ocean, waiting for her to return. Eventually, he ran away from home. Before that, he reported his father for years of abuse, which led to his father getting fired from the police force. For years, Kehoe's dad has been searching for him, but there's been no sign of him. No one knows where Kehoe is or if he's even alive. Elena goes to Kehoe's old house, now an abandoned ruin. Amidst the debris, she finds a note. If you want something badly enough, your dreams will come true in the most unexpected ways. It's something Kehoe once told her. After reading it, Elena is convinced that Kehoe is still alive. Like her, he must have been waiting and hoping all these years. Smith is confused. Why doesn't Elena hate Kehoe? If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have fallen into the ocean and gone missing for 15 years. But Elena shakes her head. She doesn't hate Kehoe. Instead, she's grateful. He helped her escape a life of misery. She explains that neither she nor Kehoe ran away just to meet their idols. They ran away to survive. Smith notices Elena's old sneakers tied to her backpack. They are the most precious thing she has left. As Smith prepares to return to Seoul, Elena begs him for help getting a ticket. She's been stranded on an island for 15 years. She doesn't want to stay here any longer. She wants to follow through with her original dream, go to Seoul, meet her idol, and become a singer. If she doesn't, then those 15 years will have been for nothing. Moved by her determination, Smith helps her buy a ferry ticket. Since he doesn't want her sleeping on the streets, he secretly lets her stay on the top floor of his house. As Elena enjoys the taste of fresh grapes, Smith asks about her future plans, reminding her that adults need to think ahead. But Elena waves him off, saying she used to make plenty of plans before, but after surviving on a deserted island for so long, she's learned that plans can change. Instead of stressing over the future, it's better to do what feels right in the moment. While talking to Smith, Elena starts to feel like he reminds her of Kehoe. He even looks a little like him. This makes Smith nervous. He starts wondering if maybe he is Kehoe and just lost his memory. He can't recall anything from his high school years. Tom, his younger brother, thinks Smith is being ridiculous, accusing him of making up a story from a famous movie. The piece of paper Elena found in Kehoe's house. It's a phrase Kehoe's mother used to say all the time. Coincidentally, it's also something Smith and Tom's mother used to say. The next day is the village festival, and Elena is finally going to meet her idol and tell her everything about the last 15 years. She's prepared a bunch of green balloons for the event. It's the official color of her idol's fan club. Smith tries to remind Elena that her idol isn't as famous as she used to be. In fact, she's been struggling with drug and alcohol addiction. But Elena doesn't care. She already found out about her idol's troubles when she first left the island. It doesn't change anything. She still loves and admires her. Elena is excited as she hands out balloons to people at the festival. She even teaches them how to wave their hands with enthusiasm when her idol comes on stage. Smith is speechless. He can't believe anyone still cheers for their idol with balloons. But Elena is completely in her own world, dragging Smith out of the car to help pass out the rest. Her idol, Kia, finally arrives, and just like the news said, she's far from the superstar she once was. The event organizers want her to sing live, but she's nervous, afraid she won't be able to pull it off. Instead of facing the moment, she opens a bottle of wine someone gave her and starts drinking, pretending to be too drunk to perform. The coordinator scrambles to find a replacement singer, and that's when Elena overhears and volunteers to be Kia's backup singer. Before going on stage, the coordinator tells Kia to turn off her mic and just lip-sync while the backup singer carries the performance. Kia stumbles onto the stage, drunk and defeated, assuming nobody really cares about her anymore. But then, she sees it, a sea of green balloons. The crowd is packed with cheering fans, their energy taking her back to her glory days. For a moment, it feels like nothing has changed. The stage lights shine bright, and the excitement in the air is just like before. She glances behind her and sees Elena, grinning from ear to green balloons tied to her head like a headband. Elena's heart races. After 15 years, she's finally standing face to face with the person she's admired for so long. The music starts. Elena gives Kia a small nod of encouragement. Kia hesitates, but eventually switches off her mic. Elena starts singing, and though Kia is hesitant at first, she slowly joins in. Their voices blend beautifully. By the time the song ends and the stage lights come up, the audience erupts into cheers and applause. Kia can't hold back her tears. Elena is certain, no matter what happens next, she never regret this moment. Kia pulls her into a tight hug, crying like a child. This moment means everything to her. She used to be one of Korea's biggest stars, but now she's been forgotten. Not only has she lost her fans, but she can't even afford her tiny basement apartment anymore. When she was invited to perform at this festival, she thought maybe a handful of people would show up. Instead, the crowd was massive, and it was all thanks to Elena. She had rallied her aunts, uncles, and anyone she could find to come cheer for Kia. Backstage, people start talking. Could this be Kia's comeback? The washed-up singer is suddenly making headlines again. Elena is overwhelmed with emotion. 15 years ago, she sent a video of herself singing to Kia, hoping for a chance. Now, she's finally able to ask what her idol thinks of her voice. Kia doesn't sugarcoat it. She tells Elena that out of all the people who auditioned back then, Elena was the best. When Elena never showed up, Kia was so disappointed that she had no choice but to pick the second best girl. That girl went on to become a famous singer. If Elena hadn't disappeared, that star would have been her. Smith watches Elena, feeling a deep sense of regret on her behalf. He blames Kiho for everything. Kiho should have done something, anything, to stop his father. If he had, none of this would have happened. But Elena isn't having it. She shoves Smith in frustration. Nobody is to blame for what happened to her. It was her decision, and she owns it. Smith tries to convince her to go after Kia, insisting that with her idol's influence, Elena could finally become the superstar she was meant to be. But Elena refuses. She doesn't want to be a burden. She's more worried about what's happening to Kia than her own dreams. Just then, Kia walks up. She has no way to get back to Seoul and nowhere to stay. She asks Smith to take her with him, offering to crash on the top floor with Elena. Later that night, Smith accidentally spills the secret to Tom that Elena has been staying in the attic. Tom rushes upstairs and finds Elena and Kia laughing, singing, and dancing together. Elena freezes when she sees him, unsure of what to say. But Tom just smiles politely, says a quick hello, and walks away. Kia is amazed by Elena. She admits that if she had been stranded on a deserted island, she probably would have lost hope a long time ago. Elena is honest and says she thought about giving up too. It happened during her 6th year on the island. She was so desperate that she jumped into the ocean. But then, out of nowhere, a cooler floated to the surface, catching her attention. Curious, she swam up, grabbed it, and found a package of instant noodles inside. Even though they were expired, she cooked and ate them. It was the first time in 6 years she had tasted them. From that moment on, she decided to wait for the next cooler and resolved to survive. No more coolers ever came, but she kept waiting, and eventually, she was rescued. Hearing the word hope makes Kia's expression darken. She confesses a secret no one else knows. She has vocal cord nodules. She had surgery, but her voice has never been the same. She keeps losing gigs because she struggles with live performances. Kia thought her career was over, that her future was going to be nothing but disappointment. But now, Elena has shown up in her life, like that cooler in the ocean. Maybe she can start hoping again. The next morning, Elena is excitedly picking a song to practice. Kia, just waking up, is confused. Then she remembers last night. She and Elena had talked for hours, drinking wine. Drunk Kia had made a big promise. She was going to train Elena to be a star. She even called her former manager and asked him to set up an audition for Elena. Now, remembering all of this, Kia feels miserable. Her former manager isn't just any manager anymore. He's now the president of a music company. And someone like her, a washed-up singer, has no right to ask him for favors. Besides, Kia knows the harsh truth. Even though Elena has an incredible voice, at 31, she's already too old for the industry. Still, Kia reaches out to President Lee. She tells him she wants to pretend to be auditioning Elena and, Even if he doesn't choose her, she hopes he'll at least help Elena get a chance to perform on stage. After hesitating for a moment, President Lee agrees. Kia is overjoyed, but she doesn't realize that Elena and her brothers, Smith and Tom, are listening from the stairwell. Elena doesn't blame Kia for anything. Instead, she feels sorry for her idol. In the past, Kia was untouchable, like a goddess, someone who never had to beg, worry, or struggle. But now, hearing her whisper and plead like this, Elena feels heartbroken. Knowing the audition probably won't go well, Kia buys Elena a cake to celebrate. Elena can't help but cry. Her idol is even kinder and more beautiful than she ever imagined. The next day, Kia takes Elena to the music company for her audition. Elena is ready to sing with her guitar, but before she even gets a chance, President Lee walks in and says he doesn't have time to listen. Kia fights for Elena, but the president refuses. Elena's age is a deal breaker. In the entertainment industry, appearance and age are walls that can't be climbed. Kia won't back down, so President Lee offers an alternative. He'll let Elena work as Kia's manager instead. Outside the door, Elena is listening. It feels like she's sinking into an ice-cold ocean. But even now, she isn't thinking about herself. She's thinking about Kia, who's being completely dismissed. Then suddenly, Elena gets an idea. Last night, Kia mentioned a contract she has with President Lee. If she sells over 20 million copies of her album, she earns half the company's shares. With that in mind, Elena walks in, smiling, and says she's willing to be Kia's manager. President Lee is pleased, but Kia is confused. Why would Elena throw away her chance at becoming a singer? Elena explains that she isn't giving up on her dream. She goes home with Smith and Tom, and together, they crunch the numbers. Kia only needs to sell 880,000 more copies of her album to hit 20 million in total sales. If that happens, President Lee will be forced to hand over half the company to her. And once Kia becomes a major shareholder, Elena will audition again, this time with no one standing in her way. Kia later attends a meeting with company investors and brings up the contract. President Lee threatens her, reminding her that the contract expires in 6 months. But Kia refuses to back down. She's determined to reach her sales goal. She calls him a coward and, in a moment of pure defiance, grabs his glasses and stomps on them. She finally understands the truth. President Lee isn't rejecting Elena because of her age. He's scared that Elena will take over his company. But even though Kia puts on a strong front, deep down, she's terrified. The contract expires in 6 months. And who in the world is going to buy 880,000 copies of an album from a washed-up singer? Just then, Elena brought some incredible news. Tom, who works at an entertainment company, is a producer for a popular comeback show. Since Kia was a huge star in the past and had given an amazing performance at the village celebration, Tom decided to invite her to the show. Just appearing on the show would help Kia regain her fame. Elena was thrilled and immediately started looking for a song for Kia to perform. She even prepared straws to help with her idol's vocal cord issues. But Kia had already made up her mind. She wanted Elena to sing for her, just like she used to. She had already picked a song, and the inspiration behind it was Kehoe. More than 10 years ago, Kehoe had come to Seoul looking for Kia. It was a snowy night when he gave Kia a picture of Elena and told her that if Elena ever came looking for her, he hoped she would embrace her, listen to her, and give her a chance. His request was so heartfelt that Kia wrote a song about it, hoping that one day, if Elena ever heard it, she would come to find her. Unfortunately, it took 15 years for Elena to finally hear that song. That night, as Elena practiced the song about Kehoe, her voice caught the attention of her brothers, Smith and Tom. Now, Elena had taken on the role of manager for the washed-up singer Kia, and with Smith and Tom's help, they accepted an invitation to a comeback singing show. The show's concept was that the main singer would perform songs from her golden era and then compare them with her current voice. Elena was actively preparing alongside the show's production team. Tom, the show's producer, was in charge of communicating with Elena. But unlike his warm and friendly brother Smith, Tom had a cold personality and wasn't much of a talker. After wrapping up the preparations, Tom told Elena she needed to get a cell phone and a driver's license, otherwise it would be difficult for the show's crew to stay in touch with her. Elena was speechless, thinking he was incredibly rude. Then, Tom told her to set up an email account. Hearing this, Smith stepped in with some advice for his brother. "You have no idea how hard it is to set up an email," he said. "You have to verify your real name, Check if your username is already taken, and then create a password that's at least 8 characters long with uppercase letters and special characters. Considering Elena had spent 15 years on a deserted island, this was going to be a real challenge for her. When Smith got home from work, he found Elena doing chores at their family's barbershop. She had applied for a job, and their mother hired her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have the money to buy a cell phone. Smith brought some seaweed rice rolls, and the two of them sat down to eat together. As they ate, Elena asked about Kehoe. She wondered why he hadn't tried to contact her yet. The thought that he might not be alive weighed on her mind. Smith tried to reassure her, offering another possibility. He explained that when he was in middle school, he had been in a car accident and suffered brain damage. After surgery, he woke up with no memory of anything before high school. He didn't even recognize his own parents. Kehoe could be just like me, Smith said. Maybe he wanted to find you, but he lost his memory. Elena found it hard to believe, but Smith's words gave her hope to keep waiting. Smith hated eating alone, so Elena told him that whenever he had to eat by himself, he should call her. She would always come eat with him. She knew exactly how it felt to eat alone. Back on the deserted island, she had to come up with all sorts of tricks to make eating less lonely. Sometimes, she would pretend that someone was sitting across the table, sharing the meal with her. Other times, she would even try to trick the ocean into eating with her. A few days later, the show finally began. Elena and Kia encouraged each other, reminding themselves that this was their chance to make the perfect comeback. The stage was beautifully set, and Kia was surprised to see the incredible spread of snacks and specialty drinks prepared backstage. Not only that, but her performance outfits were the latest in fashion, and the stylist assigned to her was one of the best in the country. When she asked about it, the assistant explained that President Lee had personally covered all the expenses. Before the show begins, Smith tells his brother, Tom, that people at the village celebration were saying Kia lost her voice because she had a cold. Smith's words make Tom think, and he rushes to the stage. There, he sees that Kia is only testing the microphone, not rehearsing her singing. Remembering Kia's past performance and Elena's incredible voice, Tom starts to piece things together. Meanwhile, Elena quickly hides the microphone just as Kia's former manager walks in and asks if she's going to sing for Kia again. Elena immediately denies it. The fewer people who know, the better. The manager wants to press for more details, but thankfully, Tom arrives just in time. The show officially begins. While everyone is distracted, Elena hides behind the stage and swaps microphones with Kia. Nervously, Kia tells Elena that she must outdo herself from 15 years ago. Only then can their dream truly begin. According to the show's format, the screen on the left plays a clip of Kia singing 15 years ago, and next, the screen on the right will show her live performance. Driven by their shared dream, Elena sings her heart out from behind the stage, pretending to be Kia. Once the song ends, the audience votes. If the screen on the right gets more votes than the one on the left, it means Kia's live performance was better than her past one. The votes are finally counted, and the right screen wins by a landslide. Kia has officially made her comeback. Overjoyed, Elena watches as Kia steps into the elevator going up to the stage while she continues singing backstage. The audience erupts in cheers for Kia, creating a huge gap in the voting results. This marks the beginning of her second golden age. When the performance ends, as promised to Elena beforehand, Kia addresses the audience, mentioning that she has been waiting for a friend. This is a subtle reference to Elena's belief that Kehoe is still out there. After stepping off stage, Kia asks Elena to go to the bathroom with her, saying it's the only place to get real feedback. Elena eagerly follows, excited to hear what people thought about Kia's performance. Everyone praises Kia, saying she sang beautifully, which makes Elena incredibly happy. Meanwhile, earlier, Smith had sent a congratulatory message. He had even put his photo shoot on hold just to watch the show. But Elena's biggest concern was whether Kehoe had seen it. After a long pause, Smith finally says, Kehoe must have seen it. Backstage, Elena gets lost in her imagination. In her mind, it's not Kia stepping onto the stage and singing. It's herself, standing in the spotlight. Sweetly, she tells herself that she wants to find Kehoe through her voice, to reconnect with the boy who once encouraged her to follow her dream. Her fantasy is suddenly interrupted by Tom. He tells Elena to let Kia know that next time, the live broadcast must follow the script. Kia's comment about looking for a friend wasn't in it. Elena tries to explain, but Tom dismisses her. In his eyes, 15 years is more than enough time for a person to change. Maybe Kehoe isn't the same person anymore. Maybe he turned bad. Elena refuses to believe it. Tom doesn't know Kehoe, but she does. She won't let anyone judge her friend. The next day, Kia receives a phone call. Because of her performance, the show had skyrocketing ratings. Even her earrings sold out. Entertainment News is praising her comeback, and Elena is thrilled for her. Kia is overjoyed, but her happiness is short-lived. That night, she meets with President Lee and wonders why he's suddenly being so attentive. President Lee, in a serious tone, tells her it's because he feels guilty. Hearing this, Kia impulsively moves to kiss him, but he stops her. Instead, he tells her a harsh truth. He had ordered the sales department to pull all her albums, both online and physical copies. From now on, nobody would be able to buy them. Kia had been aiming for 20 million album sales within 6 months, but now that goal is impossible. At the same time, Smith receives a bouquet of flowers. The card attached tells him to meet Elena at their agreed location. It's signed, Kehoe. Shocked, Smith immediately tells Elena. The moment she sees the card, she collapses to the ground, unable to stop crying. Kehoe had finally heard her sing. That night, Elena rushes to the train station. Meanwhile, Smith is at work when he suddenly gets a splitting headache. Images of a man bullying him flash through his mind. The man keeps shouting Kehoe's name. The jumbled memories overwhelm him, and Smith faints. When he wakes up and looks in the mirror, unease creeps over him. Who was that man in his memories? And who was he, really? Smith is confused. He remembers the flowers Elena received and the strange man he encountered the day before. A terrible feeling washes over him. Startled, he quickly gets in his car and drives to find Elena. But when he calls her, she doesn't pick up. Outside the train station, Elena waited eagerly for Kehoe, her heart racing with excitement. But when she turned around, the person she saw wasn't the boy she had been longing to meet. Instead, it was a middle-aged man, Kehoe's father. As soon as Elena recognized him, she panicked and tried to run. Just then, a mysterious man wearing a coat and hat grabbed her hand and pulled her away from Kehoe's dad. Startled, Elena asked if he was Kehoe. The man turned around, removed his hat, and revealed his face. It was Tom. Tom looked frustrated. He told Elena that posting a missing person message on the show was reckless and could attract dangerous people. Elena's eyes welled up with tears. To her, any lead, no matter how small, was worth following. She dropped to the ground and began to cry. Seeing her distress, Tom gently placed his coat over her shoulders and reassured her, saying that Kehoe was doing fine. Elena's face lit up. "You know Kehoe?" she asked eagerly. Tom's expression turned cold. He denied knowing Kehoe but still tried to comfort her, saying that Kehoe's dad being here was proof that Kehoe hadn't been caught. Elena felt uneasy. Even now, she didn't know if Kehoe was hiding somewhere or if he was gone. But Tom firmly told her that Kehoe was alive and in hiding, and that he was doing it well. Confused, Elena asked how he knew that, but Tom refused to explain. As they sat in a taxi, Elena turned to him and asked why he was helping her. Tom didn't answer. Instead, he just closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. Meanwhile, Smith called Elena to check on her. She told him about Kehoe's dad showing up at the meeting spot. Smith, who was still at the train station, spotted Kehoe's father and decided to follow him home, hoping to find out the truth. As Smith walked through the neighborhood, an eerie sense of familiarity washed over him. When Kehoe's father switched on the lights inside his house, a flood of fragmented memories flashed through Smith's mind. It felt as if he had lived this story before, as if he had experienced everything in that house firsthand. Doubts started creeping in. Was he actually Kehoe? Sitting in his car, overwhelmed, Smith broke down in tears. Elena called again, telling him that she was starting to agree with Tom. As long as Kehoe was safe and hiding from his father, that was all that mattered. Still shaken, Smith asked Elena if she regretted running away from her hometown with Kehoe all those years ago. "Not at all," she said softly. "It was the best decision I ever made." Noticing Smith's tears, Elena reached out and gently wiped them away. Smith didn't explain why he was crying. Instead, he leaned his head against Elena's shoulder. She comforted him, softly patting his back and whispering that the past didn't matter, only the present did. Later that night, Smith sat alone, staring at a family photo of 4 people. If he really was Kehoe, did that mean this was his family? He thought about reporting Kehoe's father to the police, but Tom was furious at the idea and strongly opposed it. Smith remained worried about Elena, but Tom promised to protect her. The next morning, Smith met with Elena again and added his phone number to her emergency contacts. Then, to her surprise, his parents added their numbers too. Suddenly, Elena realized so many people cared about her now. It made her unbelievably happy. At Tom's insistence, Elena also started learning to drive. She had a dream. One day, after getting her license, she wanted to drive her idol to their company. But while walking outside, she noticed something that made her blood boil. A worker was dumping Kia's albums. Her former manager confirmed it. The president had ordered all of Kia's albums to be recalled. Furious, Elena stormed off, determined to confront the president. But before she could, the manager stopped her. He pulled out his phone and showed her a video, footage of Elena secretly switching microphones backstage during the show. The manager had figured it out. Elena had been singing for Kia. He threatened to release the video if she went after the president. Elena had no choice but to back down to protect Kia. But to her shock, the manager didn't delete the video. On her way home, Elena ran into Tom. Like Smith, he also asked her to add his number to her emergency contacts. That's when Elena realized something. Tom's words were exactly the same as Kehoe's from years ago. It sent a chill down her spine, and suddenly, she was more curious than ever. At that moment, Kia suddenly appeared in front of the car. She tore up the wedding invitation in her hand and threw the pieces onto the ground. She blamed Elena for not meeting her that year, believing that, if she had, things wouldn't have turned out this way. After realizing that the president had recalled all her albums, Kia reached out to the president of another company, asking him to sell all her previously released albums. She even promised that he could keep all the profits. President Hang was well aware of Kia's current situation, but instead of helping, he made things difficult for her. He insisted that she sing at his daughter's wedding as a condition. Years ago, when Kia was at the peak of her career, President Hang had been her manager. But after her contract ended, she left and signed with President Lee. That decision left President Hang bitter, and now, forcing her to sing at the wedding was his way of getting revenge. Kia was furious and lashed out at Elena, but Elena still stood up for her idol. Only Tom seemed to notice the pain hidden in Elena's heart. That night, Elena carefully pieced Kia's torn wedding invitation back together. The next day, she borrowed a beautiful dress from Smith's mother and went to the wedding, hoping to convince Kia to sing with her. On the way, Elena ran into Tom again. He was also heading to the wedding. When he noticed that Elena Seal had scraped her foot, he handed her a bandage. At the venue, Tom helped Elena deliver the gift basket. To honor Kia, Elena made sure to place the basket where it was most visible, and she even wrote Kia's name in the guest book. Meanwhile, Kia was still singing karaoke, frustrated that her voice wasn't what it used to be. Just then, Elena called her. She hoped Kia would come to the wedding and reminded her that she had been Kia's very first fan since she was 5 years old. In fact, both Kia and Elena were born on the same island. When Elena was 5, she heard Kia sing for the first time. It was the most beautiful song she had ever heard. Elena also knew that President Hang, the man who had asked Kia to perform at the wedding, was once her music teacher. Kia was hit with memories from the past. Back then, she had dreamed of becoming a singer, and President Hang had given up his teaching career to support her, even arguing with his wife, which eventually led to their separation. But in the end, Kia betrayed her mentor and left. Elena encouraged Kia, telling her that no matter how others saw her, in her heart, Kia would always be the goddess she had admired since childhood. Elena even offered to be her makeup artist and protector. Finally, Kia was convinced. When the wedding started, she showed up as promised. She took Elena's hand, and together, they walked onto the stage. Under the bright lights, they sang together. As she sang, Kia remembered President Hang's encouragement from years ago. When the song ended, she lowered her head and apologized to her former teacher. The resentment between them faded away. Elena thanked Kia for singing with her. It had been her lifelong dream. Seeing Elena's pure enthusiasm, some of the disappointment in Kia's heart seemed to melt. Meanwhile, President Lee met with President Hang, offering him a high-level director position at his company in exchange for not releasing or selling Kia's old albums, but President Hang refused. That night, Elena returned the dress she had borrowed from Smith's mom. As she did, she heard the woman say a phrase that Kehoe's mother used to say to him often. Elena remembered Kehoe mentioning that it was his mother's favorite saying. She couldn't help but ask the woman if she knew Kehoe. At that moment, the woman's expression changed, and she quickly denied knowing him. That night, Smith secretly entered the house that Kehoe's father had rented in Seoul. Strangely, Even though Kehoe's dad lived alone, everything in the house was set up for multiple people. The desk in the bedroom was even arranged for two. As Smith looked around, he felt his memories blur. It was as if Kehoe's father was trying to recreate a part of his past life. Smith walked into the living room and noticed a family photo hanging on the wall. It was a picture of Kehoe's dad with his family. As he looked closer, Smith was stunned. The photo included Kehoe's dad, his mom, who now worked at a barbershop, and two children, himself and Tom when they were young. The realization hit him immediately. This man was their father. Just then, Tom rushed in. Smith quickly figured out that Tom probably knew the whole truth. At his brother's request, Tom finally told him the story he had forgotten. Years ago, Kehoe and his brother suffered under their father's harsh treatment. Desperate to escape, Kehoe secretly took on extra jobs to save money. Unfortunately, their father found out. That night, he lashed out in rage. In an attempt to protect Kehoe, Smith was injured in the head. When he regained consciousness, he had lost his memory. Their mother, wanting to erase the painful past, changed their names. Now that Smith had regained his memories, he wanted to report their abusive father to the police. He felt that, as adults, he and his brother could finally confront him. But Tom strongly objected, saying it would only tear their family apart. Having recovered his past, Smith started appreciating his family even more. He even made breakfast for everyone, but their mother seemed uneasy. The previous day, Elena had asked her about Kehoe, but she had lied and denied knowing him. Concerned, she confided in Tom, who reassured her. He also revealed that Elena had run into their father at the train station, which terrified her. Tom promised their mother that he and Smith would protect Elena. To keep Elena safe, Smith gave her a USB drive containing a video of Kehoe filming her audition 15 years ago. He told her that he had met Kehoe, who was now married and living a good life. Elena was grateful but still suspicious. She couldn't shake the feeling that their mother's words weren't just a coincidence. She still believed one of the brothers was actually Kehoe. After winning her first competition, Kia continued to compete in more comeback shows, each time securing victory with Elena's help. With support from President Wong, Kia's albums climbed the charts, redefining her as a legendary singer. She was now only 40,000 copies away from reaching her goal of 20 million albums sold. As the fourth competition approached, Kia was shocked to learn that her next opponent was Murray, the hottest singer at the moment. This was all part of President Lee's strategy to break Kia's 4-week winning streak and prevent her from hitting her sales target. To further tip the scales, Murray's manager arranged for her performance to be pre-recorded instead of live. This way, Murray could lip-sync to a flawless, edited track. Elena, acting as Kia's manager, protested, arguing that it wasn't fair. However, the manager threatened her with a video on his phone showing Elena stealing a microphone. To protect Kia's reputation, Elena had no choice but to back down. After the meeting, Elena, furious, kicked a trash can. Tom walked up and handed her a handkerchief, but Elena refused, saying it didn't matter if he ignored or comforted her. It was all the same to her. That night, Elena's mother suddenly brought out a stack of hairstyling books, urging her to give up her dream of becoming a singer and become a hairdresser instead. This caught Elena off guard, as her mother had always supported her singing dreams. Tom, sensing Elena's confusion, told her not to overthink it. Elena then turned to Tom and told him she was now sure he wasn't Kehoe. In her eyes, Kehoe had a determined and unwavering gaze, while Tom was the opposite. She could never quite figure him out. Sometimes he seemed like he was on her side, other times he felt like a stranger. Tom seemed irritated and asked why Elena hadn't stood up for Kia in the meeting. Elena, unable to reveal the secret of her singing, could only say she had her reasons. Tom simply replied that he, too, had reasons he couldn't explain. That night, Elena had a nightmare. When she woke up, she saw the hairstyling books on the table and the USB drive from Kehoe. Deep in thought, she stepped outside and found Smith listening to a song by Kia. Curious, she leaned in and asked what he thought of her and Kia singing. Smith's response was sincere. He felt that Kia's singing had grown more experienced over time. But he also made sure to encourage Elena, which made her happy. She realized that even though their personalities were different, at least Smith's attitude toward her had always been consistent. While the two were lost in the music, Tom was watching a video of Elena and Kia singing at a wedding. As the show was about to start, Kia meditated, trying to escape the fear of facing her opponent. A few days earlier, she had her throat checked. Even though she had recovered from surgery, she still struggled a bit with hitting high notes. Walking through the streets covered in Elena's advertisements, Kia couldn't help but think about the past. When her career was declining, the company had heavily invested in Murray, who was a rookie singer at the time. It was a massive investment, and from that moment on, Murray started replacing Kia as the company's new star. During that year's rookie auditions, even though Kia personally chose Murray, Murray always held a grudge against her. Once, Murray wanted to use Kia's debut song as her own theme song, but Kia refused. Later, Kia openly expressed her dissatisfaction, and Murray knew it. To her, she was nothing more than Elena's replacement. Unable to swallow her pride, Murray decided to perform Kia's debut song in the competition. As the show was about to begin, Elena's fans lined up in excitement. Meanwhile, Kia's fans were noticeably fewer, but she still stepped outside to greet them. Murray arrived and deliberately stood beside Kia, sparking comparisons between their fan bases, which only made Kia feel more humiliated. Murray won, but Kia refused to accept defeat. Instead, she called Elena forward and introduced her to Murray. Murray tried to act composed, but Kia reminded her that if Elena hadn't disappeared, the title of Music Queen wouldn't belong to her. Murray didn't back down. She turned to Elena and asked if she agreed with Kia's words. Faced with the question, Elena chose to be bold. She knew how hard it was to become the pop music queen, but she also recognized that Murray was extremely nervous at that moment. If Murray were truly confident, she wouldn't have needed to use a pre-recorded track. Murray didn't dare compete with Kia in a live performance. Elena added that, if Murray lip-synced today and still won against Kia, she would admit that even if she had been there all along, she wouldn't have been able to take Murray's place. Meanwhile, the pre-recorded track from Murray's song had already been sent to the organizers. However, due to an unfortunate coincidence, the lead producer had to be rushed to the hospital for emergency appendicitis surgery. This left Tom in charge of the show. In the interest of fairness, Tom temporarily changed the rules, requiring both Murray and Kia to perform live. Murray's manager immediately objected, bringing up Elena and Kia's past lip-syncing performances. Smith, however, stood firm. This time, Kia had to sing for herself. He also promised that, if Kia won, he would make sure Elena officially debuted as a singer. Hearing this, Kia panicked. She had worked so hard to get back on stage, she wasn't about to let Elena steal her moment. Seeing her distress, Elena told her a story. When I was on the island, I had a friend, a seagull. We would eat potatoes together all the time, and we became really close. One day, a storm swept away all of our food supplies. I was starving for over 10 days. I saw the seagull's eggs, but I didn't eat them. That seagull was my only friend on that deserted island. That was my promise. No matter how desperate I was, I wouldn't take something that wasn't mine. Just like now, I would never steal your stage. Murray also started to panic. If she performed live and lost, it would be like rolling out the red carpet for Elena's debut. But the company president reassured her that wouldn't happen. As Murray and Elena headed to the dressing rooms to get ready for the competition, Smith thought about what Tom had said. If Elena became famous, their father would definitely come looking for her, and in doing so, he would find them. That meant he could tear their family apart once again. Determined to protect his family, Smith called Elena. But just as she finished getting dressed and stepped into the hallway, Smith was left speechless. The woman standing before him was truly stunning. Before he could say anything, a staff member ran over, calling Elena to hurry for rehearsal. Smith swallowed his words. On the way, the staff member mentioned that Tom had been skipping out on the island cleanup recently. After all, he was the one who had founded the club in the first place. Back in college, Tom had never missed a single volunteer activity since founding the club. This made Elena suddenly remember something. When she was rescued from the deserted island, Tom's eyes had lit up with excitement and happiness. She couldn't help but feel suspicious again. Could Tom actually be Kehoe? During rehearsal, Elena accidentally tripped, but Tom caught her just in time. Feeling a little embarrassed, she heard Tom offer encouraging words, telling her not to be nervous on stage and to give it her all. Elena's suspicions only grew stronger. Those were the exact same words Kehoe had once said to her. A staff member jokingly told Tom that Elena, all dressed up, looked like his ideal type. Annoyed, Tom told the staff member to stay away from him because, in truth, he was jealous. The stage was set with a backdrop of a vast blue ocean. The staff chatted about how Tom had personally chosen it. Elena was struck by a memory. Back in middle school, She had told Kehoe that she would chase her dream and make it all the way to the far side of the ocean. The show officially began, and Kia and Murray took the stage. Behind the scenes, the staff whispered among themselves. Everyone believed Murray would win. After all, fan votes decided the winner, and Murray's fanbase was much larger than Kia's. Elena's words, "My voice won't betray me," still echoed in Kia's mind. After hesitating for a moment, Kia took a deep breath, faced her fans, and apologized. She admitted that someone had been singing for her throughout the competition. She was officially withdrawing and introducing Elena to the public. She also asked the audience to vote based on the singing, not the singer. With that, Elena got the chance to perform alongside Murray. As the song played, the audience cast their votes. When the performance ended, the host stepped forward to announce the results. The winner would take the stage. The lights dimmed, and as the winner was revealed, Elena's voice carried through the venue. She continued singing the song she had started backstage. Tom watched the screen, his eyes filled with warmth. As the confetti rained down, Elena stood on stage, smiling and carefree. Seeing her like that, Tom couldn't help but smile, too. The show had been a massive success. A coworker excitedly grabbed a card, eager to get Elena's autograph. Seeing this, Tom impulsively did the same, ready to run to her, until he ran straight into Smith. Furious, Smith confronted Tom. "You let Elena become a singer," he demanded. Tom had once warned Smith that if Elena became famous, their father would follow the trail and find them. Now, Smith was livid. But Tom had reached his limit. "I've endured this for 15 years, lying to you, lying to Elena. I can't do it anymore," he snapped. "I don't want to live under a fake name, and I won't stand in Elena's way." What he didn't realize was that Elena had overheard everything. The truth hit her like a wave. One of them was Kehoe. Years ago, their father had told Smith the truth about their past. Their mother had considered changing their names for protection, but if their father ever applied for residency, he would find out. Back then, their mother's new husband was a government official. Around that time, a family within his jurisdiction, a husband, wife, and two sons the same age as Smith and Tom, had mysteriously disappeared. To cover their tracks, their stepfather had borrowed that family's names and used them to change his own, along with their mother's and the boys'. Their father had also revealed Smith's original name, Cheho, and Tom's true identity, Kehoe. In reality, after Smith took Elena home, Tom had begged their parents to let her stay in the attic. Their mother had agreed, simply because Tom had finally smiled again after Elena arrived. Now, Elena looked out the window, worrying etched across her face. Just as they had feared, their birth father had found them. After seeing Elena perform, he had come looking for his sons. At that moment, Tom called, but Elena quickly hung up. Then, in secret, she met with her brother's father. She stood firm, denying she had ever met Kehoe. No matter what, she refused to let Tom or Smith be exposed. But their father was a former police officer. He could tell Elena was lying. He immediately suspected Kehoe was nearby. Panicked, Elena hurried away and got into a taxi. Overwhelmed, she started to cry. She couldn't go back to the barbershop, but she had no idea where else to go. Meanwhile, Kia had prepared a debut gift for Elena. At that moment, her brothers arrived because they hadn't been able to get in touch with her, and they were worried. Kia opened her phone and saw a message from Elena. In the message, Elena said she was thinking of giving up on her dream of becoming a singer, claiming that it was too difficult for her. But the truth was, she was trying to escape her brother and father, and she had chosen the train with the fewest passengers and the farthest destination. Eventually, she arrived in a quiet, remote town that reminded her of the deserted island where she once lived. Elena believed that Kehoe's father wouldn't be able to find her there. Elena went to a restaurant to eat, and the owner recognized her and asked for an autograph. Elena cried as she told him she had eaten the seagull's eggs. She blamed herself and felt like she had taken the opportunity that should have been Kia's. Just then, Tom showed up at the restaurant. It turned out that since Elena had appeared on TV, she had become a public figure. Wherever she went, people were secretly taking pictures of her, and her escape to this town was no exception. Tom had tracked her down by following social media posts. The restaurant owner asked Tom if he was Elena's boyfriend. Elena wiped her tears and almost denied it, but Tom openly admitted that they were high school classmates. Elena stormed out in anger. Tom stepped forward and revealed his true identity. He was Kehoe. Elena had already guessed, but to protect Kehoe, she had pretended he was Tom. She felt that Kehoe would have preferred to be Tom, too. Tom's tone was firm, just like it used to be, but since Elena had been found on the deserted island, he had wished he was Kehoe. In that moment, Tom dropped his indifferent facade. He admitted that he had wanted to be the first one to find Elena. Then he thanked her for coming back to life. Tom gently stroked Elena's cheek and embraced the woman he had thought about day and night. Elena also cried and hugged Kehoe. Smith saw this scene and was filled with disappointment. Tom and Smith searched the entire town for Elena. On their way, Smith asked his brother what had happened to him while he was unconscious. With Tom's account, fragments of Smith's memories began to come together. Years ago, Smith had been injured in the head by their father while protecting his brother. While Smith was in the hospital, their father was sent to work on the island. Since the island didn't have a big hospital, their father decided to leave his injured eldest son and his wife behind, taking Kehoe to live on the island. On the day they left, their mother secretly gave Kehoe a small sum of money and told him to wait until spring to escape their father and come find her. She also told him she would change the family's last name and disappear to a place where their father couldn't find her. After Elena's failed escape, Kehoe waited until summer to follow his mother's instructions. He found her new address in a mailbox and went to find her, finally reuniting with his loved ones. At that time, his brother had just woken up from a coma and had lost his memory. Their mother had also found a kind stepfather for them, creating happy memories for Smith and Kehoe to protect his brother. Kehoe and their mother chose to hide the painful past. A past no one wanted to talk about because Kehoe had escaped their abusive father. The next few days were full of joy for their family of 4. However, Tom still felt guilty about Elena. He always wanted her to experience the happiness of a family. So Kehoe had been waiting for Elena for 15 long years. Tom believed that Elena had been hiding to protect them. When they arrived in the town, the brothers split up to search for her, but Smith said, "If I find Elena, I will convince her to give up on being a singer for the sake of the family. I will try to persuade her to run even farther away." But when he finally found her, he didn't know what to say. Tom told Elena that if she wanted to help them, she should become even more famous, become a singer whose autograph people fight for, with hit songs worldwide. Only then would Elena be able to protect others. Tom handed Elena a card and asked her to sign it. The 3 of them got in the car, but instead of going home, they decided to drive to their family's usual weekend getaway spot. Like Tom said, Elena should experience the feeling of sharing happiness with her family. Tom also called his parents to the campsite. The whole family happily set up the tent and food. Tom and Elena hung fairy lights on the trees, and seeing his brother happy with Elena, Smith's heart was filled with conflicting emotions. Smith felt out of place while washing the dishes. He purposely reminded Elena that she no longer had her old name. Now, it was just Smith and Tom. He also wanted to know if Tom had ever had a crush on Elena back in middle school. Once again, Elena tried to deny it, but Tom admitted that his feelings for her hadn't changed. He wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to find someone he didn't care about unless he was out of his mind. Hearing this, Elena's face immediately turned bright red. That night, Elena played the guitar and sang for Tom's family, the same song she had performed at the audition 15 years ago. Gradually, in Tom's eyes, the Elena in front of him began to look like the girl from all those years ago, the girl who had always held his heart. Back at home, Tom traced Elena's signature on his hand. It said, "Thanks to my #1 fan." His parents were worried that Smith had developed feelings for Elena, but Smith reassured them he only saw her as a friend. He almost had feelings for her when he thought he was Kehoe, but now that he knew the truth, he was sure he wouldn't fight with his brother over her. Tom wasn't home, so Smith took Elena to find Kia. On the way, he bought her a cake. Elena thanked him, catching him off guard for a moment. Elena visited President Heng and received good news. Kia's album was close to reaching President Lee's goal of 20 million sales. Moreover, since Elena's last performance, many companies wanted to meet with her and sign contracts. President Wang was one of them, but Elena's heart was set on Kia. Kia had left a gift from Elena and then walked away. Elena knew that Kia must be upset about her abandonment. She rushed to find Kia. President Lee asked to meet with Elena. As a businessman, he saw her potential and wanted to sign her, but Elena turned him down. Right now, the most important thing to her was helping Kia reach the 20 million album sales goal. Even if she wanted to become a singer and release an album, she would wait until Kia's goal was achieved. Murray reminded Elena that, sooner or later, she would betray Kia, just like she always had. After all, people change as circumstances do. Elena didn't see it that way. She believed that circumstances never changed. Only people did. So, she would never betray Kia. Meanwhile, Kia was complaining to her mom at the nursing home. She knew Elena was struggling to leave, but she couldn't believe Elena actually left. Kia had put her trust in Elena, even risking her life for her. But now Elena was saying she wanted to give up on singing, and that made her feel empty. Kia checked her phone and saw that Elena had received many invitations from different companies. Producers were trying to reach Elena through Kia, who had always been there to support her. But now, Kia wasn't sure if Elena would give up her dream so easily. The radio station was playing the first ever recording of Elena's radio interview with Kia. Hearing Elena's young voice from years ago made Smith smile. Elena borrowed Smith's phone to try calling Kia again. This time, she got through. But to her surprise, an elderly woman answered, claiming to be Kia. The woman's phone rang. It was actually Kia calling. Elena took the phone from the woman and realized she was Kia's mom, who had Alzheimer's and always believed she was Kia. Elena helped the woman lie down to sleep and waited for Kia to arrive. When Kia finally showed up, Elena apologized, promising she would never run away again. Kia's tone was cold. She said nothing in life was guaranteed, and if Elena faced more challenges, she might run away again. Kia didn't want to risk her life for Elena anymore, so she called President. She wanted to change the contract. She no longer cared about the sales target. She just wanted it all to end. Seeing Kia so disappointed in herself made Elena's heart sink. Meanwhile, Tom was also dealing with a difficult problem. That night, Tom had another nightmare. He dreamt that his father was staring at a family photo, holding all the family pictures to protect his adoptive family. But despite this, Tom couldn't shake his worrying. Driven by fear, he went to the island where he had lived with his father. As expected, the restaurant owner on the island immediately told his father about his return, but Tom didn't expect his father to see through his plan. Tom had purposely returned to the island to distract his father. The father told the restaurant owner to pass along a message to his son. "Don't come to the island anymore. I'll find you soon." Tom searched online for murder cases and built up the courage to confront his father. That night, he boldly confessed that he was Kehoe. When his father saw his son after so many years, he was filled with emotion. But unexpectedly, he snatched the phone from Tom's hand. The phone was recording, as Tom had planned to gather evidence of his father's abuse. Tom pulled out a hidden recording device, which contained a record of all his father's words and actions. His father tried to grab the recording, but Tom shoved him to the ground. He threatened his father, saying he wasn't backing down out of cowardice, but because he needed the evidence to accuse him. His father guessed that Tom was the one who had taken Elena away at the train station. Tom, with a serious tone, warned his father that if he ever went near Elena again, he wouldn't care about their father-son relationship anymore. Then Tom left, his courage fueled by Elena. Back home, Tom intentionally splashed some alcohol on himself and lied to his brother, claiming he had fallen because he was drunk. The two brothers ran into Elena, who was confronting two fake fans. At first, they asked for a picture with her, but then started bad-mouthing her. Seeing Elena being bullied, Tom quickly got out of the car to help. Elena worriedly covered his face, but he lied, saying he was drunk. Smith immediately stepped in to defend Elena. The two fans wanted to post a photo of her online and trash-talk her, but Smith threatened them, making them delete the photo. Back at home, Elena was about to apply ointment on Tom when Smith saw through his brother's act. Tom confessed that he had purposely gone to see his father to gather evidence and that he believed his father wouldn't dare to return after his warning. Smith wasn't satisfied with his brother's approach. He thought their father might do something worse. Though the two argued in front of Elena, Tom opened up about his true feelings. He admitted he didn't know what his father would do, nor the terrible things his father might do when cornered. Elena hugged Tom, assuring him that his fears wouldn't come true. Tom thought she was just comforting him, but her words were actually a sign of Elena's determination. While the brothers fought against their father, Elena's music dream continued. Kia, however, had become cold-hearted toward Elena and given up on her goal of selling her albums. That night, Kia moved out of the attic above the barber shop. Her manager picked her up, and in the car, she shared her thoughts. She had slowly come to understand why Murray had been able to replace her and become the most popular pop star at the time. It was because she had been ungrateful. That was the cruel reality of the world. To succeed, you couldn't put others before yourself. Elena, for instance, if she kept putting Kia before herself, would lose her persistence in chasing her dream. That's why Kia had left Elena. Later that night, Kia went to President Lee's house, where she received a call from Elena. Elena had decided to accept his offer to sign a contract, wanting Kia to see her courage and determination. This was exactly what Kia had hoped for, but Elena wasn't a traitor. After Kia moved out, Elena often thought about her, remembering the times Kia had rubbed lotion on her and the meals she had prepared for Kia. Those happy memories lingered in Elena's heart. Meanwhile, President Lee started preparing for Elena's contract, planning for her to be the introduction for a song, but there were no lyricists or composers for it. They decided to pick a song directly from the company's music library. The staff knew that the library was filled with bad songs that no singer would want to perform, but Elena didn't doubt it. She believed President Lee had given her a treasure. She wanted to listen to every song in the library before choosing which one to sing. Elena found one song she liked. The lyricist and composer was named Waterdrop. She contacted him, hoping he'd let her sing his song, but Waterdrop refused her. He even said he knew and hated Elena. This left Elena confused. After arriving at the company, the manager escorted her inside and sarcastically remarked that trainees were always chasing after a futile dream. In his view, if you weren't exceptionally talented, you should give up early. Mad disagreed with him, but the manager grew angry, claiming that was why he couldn't stand her. She was just too annoying. That's when Elena realized that the manager was actually Waterdrop. The manager had his own tragic backstory. Years ago, he was a delivery driver with a passion for music, so he wrote many songs. After a random encounter with Kia, he gave her one of his songs, hoping she'd listen. Kia was impressed with the manager's voice and his talent. But President Lee had a different take. He believed the manager was too old and lacked commercial appeal. Kia, however, disregarded Lee's objections and decided to fund an album for the manager herself. With Kia's full support, the manager's album was released, and he even performed on stage. Yet, the singer who ended up winning awards and capturing attention was Murray. That setback made the manager decide to quit his dream of becoming a singer. At President Lee's suggestion, he switched careers and became a manager for other artists. But Elena wasn't ready to give up on her own dream. She listened to the manager's songs and began revising them, hoping to create something special. When she presented the revised version to the manager, he shouted at her to face reality and give up. Elena persisted, explaining that if she wanted to give up, she wouldn't have spent 15 years alone on a deserted island. The manager asked her what if, after another 10 years, she still hadn't made it, wouldn't she regret it? Elena laughed and said maybe she would, but at least she'd spent 10 years doing what she loved, and that was worth something. Her simple but heartfelt philosophy deeply affected the manager. In the end, he agreed to let her sing the song she had worked on. Seeing Elena's dedication, Tom secretly went to Kia and revealed his identity as Kehoe. He asked her for help with revising the lyrics and music for Elena. Kia didn't refuse, but Tom couldn't tell her that he had worked on the revisions himself. He knew that in the past, Kia had failed to encourage the manager, but now she was determined to help Elena push forward. After Kia revised the song, it was nearly perfect. The day of Elena's debut arrived, and as she confidently performed on stage, the manager, watching from the audience, couldn't hold back his tears. He finally understood that he didn't actually dislike Elena, he just feared facing his own cowardice. After the debut, Elena sent a video link to Smith, asking him to like it. He wanted to reply but, thinking about his brother's sweet relationship with Elena, he put his phone away. That day, Smith decided to share a meal with Elena, so he brought his food to the attic. But when he walked in, he saw Tom already having breakfast with her. That moment left him feeling a little disappointed. Smith was working on a news story about a car accident caused by a hornet sting. The victim was a classmate of both Tom and Elena. The classmate's wife believed the accident was no accident and was determined to uncover the truth. The investigation revealed that the last place her husband had been before the crash was the security office where Smith's father worked. Smith suspected that his father might be involved, so he started looking for dashcam footage from the day of the accident. With the help of the editor-in-chief, Smith managed to recover the deleted footage, even though the file had expired. The footage revealed his father curiously watching the classmate's car. Smith immediately called the police, but the case needed to be transferred to the Criminal Investigation Department, meaning his father couldn't be arrested right away. In addition to this, Smith stumbled upon a secret. His stepfather had lied about learning flower arrangements at the community center. In reality, the flowers had been bought from a store. And that wasn't all. Due to the recent drought, the water level had dropped, and 2 farmers had noticed a car submerged in a river. That night, Tom was on his way home when Elena texted him, saying she wanted to eat the bowsy they had before. Excited, Tom happily turned around to buy some. But while waiting in line, he had a strange feeling that something was off. He turned on his phone's camera and saw that his father was at home and that his mom and Elena were in danger. Earlier, while Elena was helping out at the barbershop, their biological father had shown up looking for her. Their mother was trembling, and Elena hid to the side, silently texting Tom as an excuse to stay outside. Then she threatened to call the police, but their father wasn't scared. He warned that if the cops got involved, Tom's brother's crime of using a false identity would be exposed. He said he would only let things go if their mother came back home with their 2 sons. Elena called the police, reporting that the man who had been following her before was still harassing her. But their father wasn't intimidated. He declared he would go to the police station himself and report his wife's family. Just then, Smith and their stepfather returned. Faced with the threat, their stepfather didn't back down. He confessed, just a few days earlier, he had actually been questioned at the police station under the pretense of learning flower arranging. Seeing the man who had stolen his wife and children standing in front of him, their biological father lost it. He lunged at their stepfather in a rage. Elena tried to stop him, but got pushed aside. Smith rushed over to shield Elena, then punched their father. Only Elena's desperate pleas made him stop just in time. Tom hurried back at that moment, just as his father was being taken away in a police car. Elena wanted to comfort Tom, but as she stood up, she suddenly fainted. Tom carried her to bed, and she woke up quickly. She asked Tom to completely erase their abusive father from his memory. Someone like that wasn't worth remembering. It seemed like their father had brought nothing but bad luck. Not long after, the bodies of a family of 4 were found at the bottom of a lake. It turned out that this was the family whose identities Tom's family had borrowed. The news quickly broke, exposing Tom's family for using false identities. People around them started spreading rumors, calling Tom and his brothers ungrateful sons and accusing their mother of being a fraud. But Elena refused to stay quiet. She went outside to defend Tom's family. Many of the people talking were regular customers at the barbershop. Elena argued that, if they were regulars, they should care about the family struggles instead of spreading false rumors. Tom saw how fiercely Elena stood up for his family. Meanwhile, Smith had injured his shoulder, making it difficult for him to move. Elena ran over to help him tie his arm sling, unaware that Smith was watching her with a certain interest. Smith explained that he used to be a legal reporter, and that getting a pardon for identity theft was extremely difficult. The only way to fix things now was to prove that their father had mistreated his wife and 2 sons from the beginning. They needed an outsider, someone who had personally suffered at their father's hands, to testify. That would give the judge grounds to rule in their favor. The friend who had been injured by their father was still unconscious in the hospital. His wife was pressing the police to arrest the attacker, but the dashcam footage they had recovered wasn't enough. The police could only wait for the victim to wake up and give a statement. Elena started studying law books, hoping she could find a way to help Tom's brothers. Just then, Kia called and asked to meet. Elena ran to see her. In front of Elena, Kia shared her own story. Years ago, President Hang and her mother had wanted to know if Kia would become famous. So, her mother consulted a fortune teller. The fortune teller said that the one who would become famous would be the person who bought her necklace. She then asked Kia how much she was willing to pay for it. Kia answered that she was willing to spend every penny she had and everything she would earn in the future just to buy it. The fortune teller laughed and declared that Kia would, indeed, become famous. Now, Kia understood that the fortune teller hadn't actually predicted the future. She had only tested Kia's determination. Only those with real perseverance could push through hardships and never give up. That's why Kia had asked Elena to meet. She wanted to know how serious Elena was. If Elena was strong enough, Kia was willing to take full responsibility for her album. But there was one condition. Elena could never contact Tom's family again. Kia knew that Tom's family was Elena's greatest weakness. In the past, Elena had already given up her dreams to protect them. If she truly wanted to make her dreams come true, she had to cut that weakness out of her life. Faced with this decision, Elena couldn't answer right away. She still didn't know that Kia had also called Tom. Tom was outside, eavesdropping on their conversation. Kia gave Elena a day to make her decision and handed her a necklace as a symbol of Tom. Tom, too, had to make his own choice. He reflected on all the memories he shared with Elena in the past, and without hesitation, he made up his mind. He went to the store, bought a bunch of daily necessities, and moved them into the new apartment he had rented. He cleaned up the place, preparing it for her. Meanwhile, Elena was also making her decision. After surviving on a deserted island, she had vowed that from that moment on, she would do what she wanted the most every day. Holding on to this belief, Elena packed her clothes into a bag. The shoes Kay had given her 15 years ago were still there. She hesitated for a moment, but finally decided to leave the shoes behind. She wanted to move forward and not dwell on the past. She grabbed her luggage and said her goodbye to the attic. It was raining as Elena looked at the sneakers on her feet. These were the shoes Tom had bought for her the day she left the island. She returned to the attic and placed the shoes into her luggage. Just as she was about to leave, Tom arrived. Seeing the luggage at her feet, he realized that Elena was leaving. Elena casually said she was leaving for her future. Tom remained silent, handing her an umbrella, and drove her to the new apartment he had rented for her. In truth, he had planned for her to live there from the moment she was rescued. Elena was drenched in the rain, and Tom wrapped a towel around her. He had prepared everything in the new apartment, but Elena felt uncomfortable with his treatment. How could she betray him? Tom told Elena not to waver. He reassured her not to worry about his family, urging her to follow her dream with all her heart. If she ever felt like she couldn't achieve it despite trying her best, she could come find him. Kehoe hadn't changed at all, which left Elena choking up with emotion. Tom told Elena to take care of herself and gave her the necklace, then turned to leave. Holding the necklace in her hand, Elena couldn't hold back her tears. After she collected herself, Elena called Kia and told her that she had decided to dedicate herself completely to her dream. Tom informed his family about Elena's departure, asking her not to answer their calls or get involved with him anymore. This was the only way to prevent identity theft from becoming an obstacle for Elena. His brother's statement angered Smith, who went to the third-floor room that had once been Elena's. The room was empty except for a lighter, the same one he had used the night Elena moved in. Smith had lit a candle for her and told her to keep the lighter. He broke down, realizing he had loved Elena for a long time, and now that he knew he wasn't Kehoe, he couldn't suppress his emotions anymore. After leaving Tom's house, Elena fully committed herself to her dream. Kia also kept her promise, personally producing Elena's album, and even giving up the company shares she was about to receive. In the following days, Tom and Smith both resigned from the company, and the family cooperated with the police investigation. Sometimes, Elena would pass Tom on the street, and they would meet each other in their dreams. Kia swore to make Elena the best singer she could be, but the crisis wasn't over. News broke that Kia was supporting the newcomer Elena instead of pursuing company shares. President Lee planned to hold a press conference, and Kia prepared a statement for the press, hoping to confess the truth and calm the storm with an apology. Elena, however, also wanted to tell the truth. Upon hearing this, she prepared to reveal her purpose as Kia's manager. Kia immediately objected, saying she had become a liability for Elena, and it was time to cut off the mess. Elena returned the necklace to Kia and firmly stated that she would not give up on her dream for Kia. Kia decided to hold a press conference to address the situation and avoid drawing more attention to Elena. Elena, too, was determined to support Kia, so she wanted to prepare her own statement. However, she wasn't sure where to start. Just then, Smith sent her a message saying he was eating alone. After reading the message, Elena immediately went to meet him. She was surprised to find that Smith had already helped her draft potential questions for the press conference and suggested possible answers. He also warned Elena about the different scenarios she might face. The next day, as the press conference was about to begin, President Lee tried once again to convince Elena that she should release an album to further her own career instead of helping Kia. Elena, however, was firm in her decision. She explained that this time, she wasn't just helping Kia, she was helping herself. Keeping the secret would only allow the media to blow it up eventually, so it was better to confront the situation head-on. When the press conference started, Kia humbly apologized to the reporters and confessed that she had been promised half of the company's shares if she sold more than 20 million albums and participated in the TV show. She also admitted to using lip-syncing on stage. Elena, in turn, acknowledged that she had encouraged Kia to accept the shares. The reporters quickly scrambled to ask why Elena had done this. Elena answered honestly, saying that she had always seen Kia as her idol and hoped her idol would continue to sing, with her songs topping the charts, surpassing all other artists. Even though they both explained themselves, the reporters twisted the narrative. They suggested that the once popular singer Kia wasn't just after the shares. She also had the ridiculous ambition to dominate the charts. What angered Kia even more was that the reporter who wrote the article had gotten the story from President Lee himself. President Lee had been worried that Kia might be a liability to the company, potentially bringing it down. Kia retorted, saying that if it hadn't been for her 15 years ago, President Lee wouldn't have been able to start the company. President Lee didn't back down, claiming that while Kia's career had declined, it was because of his efforts that the company had grown to its current size. Kia decided to leave President Lee's house, and Elena, along with her manager, went downstairs to meet her. On the way, Kia's mother's nurse called, and Kia rushed over. Her mother, who had Alzheimer's disease, still thought she was her daughter, which confused Kia. Elena explained that a few days ago, she had heard Kia's mother talk about how, years ago, she had dreamed of becoming a singer and had chosen the stage name Kia for herself. It was only then that Kia realized her mother had placed her own dream onto her daughter. When she saw her mother again, Kia was overcome with emotion. She also felt anger toward the reporter's distorted version of the events. Meanwhile, Smith and Tom were also present. Smith angrily confronted Tom, asking why he hadn't called Elena. Tom calmly replied that he had promised to cut off all contact with her. Smith understood that Tom was being cautious due to the ongoing investigation. Tom, deeply worried about Elena, was doing his best to avoid turning his family's issues into a public scandal while Elena continued to pursue her dream. He had to suppress his feelings. Smith secretly took Elena to the third floor of his house again and confessed everything to her. He warned that their whole family could be convicted and they might lose everything. While they were talking, Tom came upstairs and said he would take Elena home. On the way, Tom expressed his hope that Elena wouldn't come to their house anymore. Elena replied, saying, "I'm just like you. No one in their right mind would think about or care for someone they didn't like for 15 years. My feelings for you 15 years ago are still here, so no matter what happens, I won't give up on this relationship and I won't give up on you." The day of the prosecutor's interrogation arrived, and Tom's family anxiously made their way to the office. Their birth father complained and expressed regret in front of the prosecutor, claiming that he was the victim. He even asked the prosecutor to review the home security footage, insisting that Smith had tried to hit him. However, their stepfather defended his son, stating that Smith hadn't hit him, but was only trying to protect him when their father had attempted to strike him. The prosecutor, who was both sensitive and compassionate, reminded their birth father that he had previously expressed a desire to reunite with his family and make amends for his past mistakes, yet now he was suing them. It seemed as if he just wanted to punish them severely. In contrast, although their stepfather had lied about his identity, his intention had always been to protect his family. When comparing both situations, it was clear who the true father figure was. It was now Tom and Smith's turn to be questioned. Their birth father mentioned that he had bought life insurance for both of his sons, ensuring that if he died, they would receive over 100 million in insurance money. He tried to show his love for his sons in this way. Before the prosecutor could ask further, an insurance agent who had handled their birth father's policy, Tom's high school classmate, was revealed to have had a car accident and been in a coma for the past 4 months after meeting their father. What their birth father hadn't anticipated was that his classmate had woken up just the day before. The prosecutor immediately reached out to the classmate, who testified that their father had intentionally released hornets into his car, causing the accident. The prosecutor then turned to Tom and asked if he knew about his stepfather's identity theft. Encouraged by Elena, Tom bravely admitted it. He also explained that his stepfather had resorted to this action because he had no other way to protect their mother and 2 brothers. After all, 15 years ago, there were no laws to safeguard their family. The interrogation ended, and as the family walked out of the prosecutor's office, it was pouring rain. Tom was about to buy an umbrella when he saw Elena approaching with one. She complimented Tom's family, then handed the umbrella to them. Seeing her husband standing alone in the rain, Their mother took the umbrella from her hand and gave it to him. The husband, whose fate had long been sealed, watched as his wife and children walked away, finally realizing the true meaning of family. To prepare for Elena's album, Kia had arranged for a special studio. Renting this studio had been a challenge, but Elena gave Kia the chance to use it. When Kia was young, her mother used to sing her favorite song to her. Although Kia couldn't recall the lyrics, Elena helped her write them down. The night before, she had wanted her idol to fulfill her mother's last wish before it was too late. In the beautiful lighting and backdrop of the studio, Kia sang her mother's song, which also symbolized her regret for her mother's unfulfilled dream. After the song ended, Kia expressed concern for Elena, hoping she would always prioritize her own dreams. Elena, remembering the wish she had shared with Kiho to become a famous singer like Kia, now understood that fame fades over time. Only courage and love are everlasting. Kia's manager sent the video of her singing to the reporters, including the one who had written the article about Kia wanting company shares. Kia's new song quickly climbed the charts, and the news covered her story, erasing the scandal and putting her back in the spotlight. Reporters praised her as a company legend, no longer a liability. Sadly, Kia's mother passed away soon after. While packing her mother's belongings, Kia discovered a locked drawer. Remembering the key her mother had given her, she recalled her mother's instructions not to let President Lee know about it. Kia opened the drawer and found an envelope. Inside was a bill for exporting her old album to Japan, showing that over 140 million copies had been sold there. With domestic sales added in, her album had far exceeded the target of 20 million copies. This meant that, according to the previous contract, Kia would have been entitled to half of the company's shares a long time ago. On the other side, Tom's family received a notice from the prosecutor's office, and it was good news. Due to insufficient evidence, the prosecution had decided not to press charges. Tom quickly shared the great news with Elena, who rushed upstairs. Tom opened his arms wide for her, and Elena ran into his embrace. They hugged and kissed. That night, Elena stayed to celebrate with Tom's family, and their high school friends joined in as well. Everyone agreed to meet more often in the future. Meanwhile, their stepfather and Smith went out to buy a cake. But on the way back, their stepfather suddenly collapsed, and blood began flowing from his body. It was their birth father. He was behind the attack. The birth father continued his final struggle in the heavy rain, and the cake their stepfather had been holding fell to the ground. It was inscribed with a message, "Forever loving my family," the most sincere thing a father could say. Their stepfather was rushed to the hospital for surgery, but it was unclear if he would survive. Their birth father also had a plan. He had left behind a will. Since their stepfather never officially registered his marriage to their mother, if he died, he would be considered an outsider, meaning their mother would never be able to divorce her cruel husband. The two sons would also have to retain their birth father's last name. Seeing the horrible will left by his father, Tom couldn't hold back his tears. He didn't want to live under the shadow of his evil father anymore. His only hope now was that his stepfather would wake up. If he did, he could legally marry their mother under their real names and adopt the two boys, making everything legal and official. While their stepfather remained in a coma, Tom and Smith kept talking to him, as he was the father they saw before them. Elena also spoke to their stepfather in his hospital bed, telling him that he was the one who had taught the boys the true meaning of being a father. Their mother, who had been deeply saddened, had secretly had a relationship with this man who wasn't her husband. She had even taken a fake wedding photo. Although the photo wasn't real, the tears she shed now were undeniably sincere. Even though they weren't married, her love for this man had long surpassed what she had experienced with her original husband. Fortunately, their stepfather finally woke up. He had been an orphan, and the happiest time of his life had been when his wife and 2 sons entered his world. He then registered his marriage with their mother and officially adopted the 2 boys. The family was now looking forward to creating many more happy memories together. After the death of their birth father, he was finally left with no family. Once everything had settled, Tom and Smith returned to their previous jobs and restored their original last names. Their parents were also preparing to take their real names and use them for their new hairstylist certification test. Smith became more sensitive, and every time he went home, he would hug his family. Having almost lost his stepfather, Smith decided that he would no longer hide his feelings. He wouldn't let it be his biggest regret. From now on, he would express how he truly felt. One day, when Smith met Elena, he suddenly had the urge to call her sister. But Smith quickly refused. He didn't want to be just a brother to Elena. Later, Tom and his old co-workers gathered at a restaurant to celebrate. As Tom saw Elena happily eating with his brother, he couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy and left after the meal. Elena gave Smith some money, thinking that since the two brothers were still unemployed and their barbershop was closed, they could use it to cover their expenses. When Elena learned that the brothers had returned to work, she asked Smith to give Tom the money for the rent. Tom had helped Elena find a place to live and paid the rent. After hearing Elena's words, Smith realized that ever since they had rescued Elena from the deserted island, Tom had been the one to help her find a place to stay. Smith suddenly realized that he had always been a step behind his brother. That night, Smith talked to Tom. He asked his brother if he still believed that finding Elena on the deserted island was just a coincidence. Looking at Elena's signature in his hand, Tom decided it was time to share his true thoughts. He explained that he had been going to Seoul Station every week, volunteered for the Navy, and chosen to go to deserted islands for over 10 years, all in the hopes of finding Elena. The reason his brother had found her that day was because he had followed him to volunteer. It wasn't a coincidence, it was fate. Hearing his brother's words, Smith sighed. Compared to Tom's dedication to Elena, his own feelings seemed insignificant. In school, he had always wanted to compete with his younger brother, so Smith told Tom not to just quietly yield. Sometimes, he needed to learn how to express himself in front of the people he liked. After the barbershop reopened, Elena joined in to help clean up the store. The neighbors, who had once misunderstood the family, arrived with gifts in hand. Things were getting better. That evening, as Elena sat under the starry sky, writing lyrics and composing music, Tom remembered what his brother had said. He asked Elena, "Do you think it was just a coincidence that I found you on the deserted island?" Elena smiled softly, knowing it wasn't a coincidence. She understood that Tom had put in a lot of effort to find her, and she knew everything he had done for her. Elena's diary was nearby, and Tom eagerly grabbed it to read it. Just then, Smith happened to see them. He felt a little sad, but had no intention of letting Elena know how he felt. He cared more about his younger brother's happiness. Under the stars, Elena leaned into Tom's arms. "From now on, whether it's love or my dreams, I'll chase them," she said. Elena's debut album was about to be released, but President Lee asked her to make some adjustments to one of the songs with Murray. Kia was furious and went to confront him. Additionally, the bill for Kia's album release in Japan years ago had been torn up. She demanded an explanation. President Lee explained that it was her mother who had torn up the document because she wanted her daughter to remain a singer, not become a company manager. He also justified his decision to adjust the song. He believed that Elena and Murray had unique styles, and swapping the songs could make their albums even more dynamic. To Kia's surprise, Elena agreed with the adjustment. The same happened with Murray. Kia decided to respect Elena's decision. Finally, Elena released her first album, and the song she had worked on with Murray topped the charts. Her mother even took a photo in front of Elena's album poster. The manager of the company eagerly applied to transfer to Elena's team to become her manager. Kia was a little upset to see the song she had altered always at the top of the charts. She wondered if it hadn't been changed, would Elena have been the one at the top instead? Elena, always optimistic, was not bothered. In fact, she had already planned an event. It was a huge surprise when Elena showed up at the village's anniversary celebration, the same place where they had met 3 months earlier. Before the anniversary started, Kia and the manager bought a bunch of blue balloons, just like Elena had done for her. Now, it was time for Kia to support Elena in the same way. As they inflated the balloons, Tom and Smith showed up to help, just like 3 months ago. They all released the balloons for the attendees, wanting to cheer Elena on until the very end. Kia, though, still felt some hesitation toward Elena. Elena comforted her by telling her the story of her time stranded on the island. After being stranded, she had lost all hope, but eating ramen from a cooler reignited her will to live. She reminded herself to survive just for another 5 minutes. To fill that time, she focused on the sunlight coming through the leaves, made friends with seagulls, and cleaned up the beach. Slowly, 5 minutes turned into 50, and eventually, the rescue drone arrived to save her. This experience taught Elena that instead of worrying, it's better to focus on doing what you can in the moment. With that simple philosophy, she stood on stage at the anniversary celebration. Below her was a sea of blue balloons, and among the crowd were many of her fans, including Tom and Smith, cheering her on. Elena raised her voice, and her song became the song of the year. She stepped into a larger world and became the newest and brightest star. The person adjusting the camera backstage was Tom. Over the following days, Elena was often seen in photos with Tom's family. Her career was flourishing, and she was surrounded by loved ones. Elena was getting closer to her dream. And with that, the film ends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more exciting films. See you next time.